today's painting session, we're going to paint two cute little bunnies nestled in the snow. The painting behind me will show just a little bit of what we're going to try to achieve in this session. And we've got the two little rabbits. And let's come up to the blank canvas and see what I've done. First thing I did is my reference material, I had a little card that had cute little bunny rabbits on it, and I thought they would look cute. But I took them out of this card idea, did a black and white copy of it so I could get my shading and shadows a little better. Then I did a drawing for my basic positioning. The tracing that I originally decided for positioning, you can shift it anywhere on the canvas. And I use graphite under it and go over the lines to transfer the drawing. So that's what basically all we have on the canvas right now is a drawing. Now a lot of times we take art appeal and protect this and paint the background first. That can be done in this painting, but instead today, because the bunny rabbits are a focal point, I want to do them first and then we'll paint back around them. So let me show how you can approach that. If you're limited on time, sometimes it's better to work in the most important area, get it achieved, and then work in the background, which is more generalized. The first thing I'm going to do is pick up a brush and go down to the palette. And I want you to look down on the palette for a moment, and you'll notice that two colors that I'm going to be using a lot today is alizarin crimson and phthalo green. And I have them placed next to each other so that in the middle I mix them together and they neutralize and make grays. And then as I come down I added some white. And these colors will be the ones that I work with a lot in the snow bases. So as we come up to the canvas, I'm going to come up and I'm going to first position where I want the little hole from the bunny rabbit. I'm going to make sure that I start just about right back out of the back, and this is going to be the little entranceway to the where they're going to be hiding, and this is again alizarin and phthalo. And I'm putting this on for this basic entryway so that it can dry and set up before I start painting in the snow area. So that's about where I'm going to have the hole to the bunny rabbit. We'll block it in just a little bit. And that'll give me an idea of the positioning. Also, so I can get a little drying to this, I'm going to go down and get a little more heavier on the phthalo green, and I'm putting thinner into this. And where there's a little pathway that comes up to them as if they've come down into the snow, whoops, that's a little too green. I have to go back and get a little more alizarin in that. Right up in here underneath the bunny, there's going to be a little path, and it's really where he's just kind of hopped and drug up and towards that area. And it's just a shadowing that I want to put in and apply there. A little bit of shadowing underneath the bunny. That helps kind of set him down. It's another little shadowing area over here. I'm really just cleaning my brush out on this edge. And that established a few little dark areas. Nothing with a lot of paint, but it does give me a little something to work in the layout of the interest area. This is going to be kind of a crevice in the snow, shadowing back in there. I'm going to wipe my brush and make sure I didn't get too much paint on there and blur the edges, because I'm going to be bringing light colors and mixing into that. So if I think I have too much paint there, okay, that's going to be fine, and then we'll paint this in later after we do the bunny rabbits. We're going to go down now and use a small brush, and the first thing I want to try to capture are his eyes, because that way we can really just let him watch us, actually both of them. And we're kind of lucky we have just really two eyes that we have to concern ourselves with. In the eye area, I took a little bit of permanent black magic marker and darkened in the eyes. You can take acrylic and then paint it in and let it dry, but let's see if we can get in here real close. And I'm going to give just a little bit of burnt sienna on the bottom edge of the eye, and I'm not sure you'll be able to see that. I'm just lightly making a stroke on the lower portion of both eyes to give a little warmth. Maybe a touch of ochre will bring that up so you can see it. And just a little bit of coloring. Well, it's really not going to carry too well. A little bit more. And I'm just putting a little warmth in the eyes. And I don't think that really showed, but it's there. And then I'm going to take a little bit of light, kind of an off-white, and put a little spark in his eye. Just give a little, about 2 o'clock, and give a little tap of light. Sometimes I even soften it just a little bit. So that'll get the eye with just a little coloring in it. And then I'm going to take the same little brush, and I'm going to establish with an off-white, which is basically your thick titanium white with a little bit of ochre and sienna in it. And we're going to come up and put the little patch around his eyes. They look like they have a little mask on. I'm just going to go up and around. I'm just kind of rubbing and scrubbing this color on it, and I think you can see that. And this is actually a white-looking area. It's located there. It's on the other bunny rabbits around his eye, and if I'm careful, I can pretty well get it without bumping into the eye and have to redo the eye. But if I were to bump into the eye area, I would just go back in and put a little reapplication. So this is the light fur just above and below the eye. And so each one, I have a little too much paint on my brush, tap it off, and go a little bit underneath there. There's an area just underneath their nose, too, that has a little extra light. So we're going to put that in there, the little pouches of fur there that are lighter. And I'm blocking those in. So I'm really looking for my light areas, and yet right now they don't look as light as they will when I get my darks in there. Around the edge of the ear, kind of surrounds the outer boundaries. The fur is lighter there. And the top edge of this ear. So I'm just kind of scrubbing it on so that I get these little built-in patches of light. I want to get these established early so that I don't lose them. Okay, I'm just doing a little bit of that. Okay. On the chest of the little smaller bunny, I'm going to put a little bit of this down in that area because his chest has a light tannish fur. That's about all I need other than a little bit on his toes. That's the back bunny's toes, and that's one toe of the front bunny. But that's basically all we're going to put with the lights for now. I'm going to switch brushes, and I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber to establish the darks in the bunny rabbit. What I do is look at the reference picture, and I study it, and as I look for shadowing parts, I look for the patches where I see the darkest darks. And this is the back end of this ear, of the back ear, and there's a little bit on a kind of a widow's peak area there, right down in the hole of that ear, between his foot and his body. Not too much shadow in the rest of the area, just under his nose. And I'm really just looking for shadow patches to help separate the portions of his body. And I'm just putting him in loosely at this stage. This is almost a wash of color. This will help the areas separate. His nose is not too dark. It's a tan, but not too dark. We'll darken on his back to separate that piece of cheek over there. That's going to be more of his back area. A little bit up on the top, we'll go over the other edge of the ear. I think his ear just got a little larger. But as long as I block it in with a little base tinting, I can always add more paint over it. That's kind of dark. He's got real dark markings on the top of his ear. A little bit of shadowing under the back edge of this eye. And this is almost like a necklace around this one. A little shadowing that's going to allow me to make the fur stand out a little better. Okay. So I'm basing him in, and this is burnt umber, and then I'll be putting a lighter value on top of this. So I'm just rubbing, scrubbing, and kind of giving a block in. Now I'm not concerned about fur strokes right now because I really don't want the fur to look like fur just yet. I'm just trying to get in some darks. A little bit more burnt umber. And let's give a few more shadows around just underneath where this ear attaches. A little more on the back rabbit to push him back in shadow. And then we'll use a lighter value there. The little back side of this leg would be quite dark, and a little bit of this leg. Now those that belong to the little rabbit behind there, and so if I push this dark, it helps his nose show, and we'll use a lighter value for that. Okay, just cleaning my brush out a little bit down on the lower portions. Now I'm going to go to a little burnt sienna and white with a little burnt umber in it. I don't want him to get too warm. So it's really kind of a tan tint. And I'm going to start blocking in a little bit more of the rest of the bunny. You can see it's not as dark as the darkest dark, or as light as the light value. So it's a middle value. Block it in real quickly. Let's put a little bit in the ear. And as I do, I kind of soften into the last coloring, trying to keep the positions of the objects pretty much right where they are. And real quickly, I'll reload. I'll come down a couple of times and get a little bit more of this paint. But it's still basically just a medium value, kind of a tannish color. And we're going to block in the rest of the white canvas, getting an initial coating of paint. Then we're going to try to make it look a little bit like fur. So what I'm trying to do is establish a block in, keeping the colors closely related, but definitely getting a coverage on the canvas. Now by softening, as I rub the brush, it kind of blends one color right into the other, so I get kind of another tinting of the color mixes. Just rub, 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 tickle, blend, and he will become soft, and that's what I want. I want him to look soft and not too cartoonish. So I have to do a lot of this little tickling I thought about doing some of this off camera, but I thought it would be more beneficial for you to see how I keep rubbing and blurring and making sure I've got coverage. So I made a decision not to do much off camera on the bunnies, but I'll probably later, when I get into some of the background, do a little of that off camera. Just don't have enough time to do all that I want to do. So we'll do what's important, so that you really need to learn these. So I'm blurring and blending so I don't lose the lights and the darks. Now there I went a little out of his ear and got his ear a little bit bigger, but I'll cut that back down when I put that dark behind him. Okay, I think you can see the basic softness that's achieved as you rub and blend. And you want to get enough paint on there to cover the actual lines of your drawing. Sometimes they show through a little bit. Now if you lose your separations of your darks, then you need to go back and get a little more burnt umber and restate your darks a little bit. Right here his foot began to dissolve into his face too much and you can't see the separation. So I put a little extra dark on his face behind the foot and it makes his foot pop out. And then I blend up into his face because that shadow's more in his face. A little under this eye, that eye, just restating a few of the darks so the objects will stay separated. And just a little fuzzy, fuzzy, fuzzy. All right, that's going to be enough for an initial block in, and we'll let that paint rest and set up a little bit before we come back and try to put the little first strokes on it. So I have an initial covering, not too much variation, and let's go back into the background. And I'll do just a little bit more into that dark hole, although I could do the snow first. We'll use this brush while I have it handy, using alizarin and phthalo mixed, which make a wonderful black, or you could use black right out of the tube. And I'm going to go ahead and finish putting the dark in here. Now you'll notice as I work on the white canvas and I don't go back out to the edges because I don't want a lot of paint there. I want this to be drier and not make my snow that dirty. Now as I come down to the bunny rabbit and I start getting closer and closer, I can paint out that little extra smudge I put in there that I didn't want. And if I softly come down and connect, it'll give a soft edge. So I just kind of pull, leaving a little fuzzy edge around the edges of the bunny. Keeps him soft rather than going and chiseling out around him. And then we'll put more fur on him anyway. Just quickly blocking in behind him for contrast. And that makes him pop out and look lighter than he actually was. Now for the snow area, I'm going to use a larger brush. Let's come down to the palette. I've already done a little mixing, so I'd have enough paint to cover the background quickly. I have the same combinations of color, alizarin and phthalo green mixed together, touches of both, and put with some soft white so that I can go in and start blocking in areas of the snow. First I'm going to start down here with this pinker color, and you can see that's a fairly strong pinkish gray. Put a little bit down here in the front. Then I'm going to jump up above the little hole and put a little bit of that pink tone up over here. Get a little of that coloring, and I want him a little over on this side. So I'm just kind of patchworking in. Then I start adding a little more phthalo to the mixture so that I get a little more of a grayish tint or greenish tint. And I'll start working up over in this area. So you can see, well actually let me put it right next to it, that I'm now a little greener, heavier on the phthalo, less on the pink side. Surround that, blend into it, and start blocking in the snow area. This is just an underpainting, and I'll be putting lighter lights on top of this. And I go right across that dark little trail there and soften. If I push firmly, I can usually get a little more paint out of that brush. And that's what I need to get the paints out of the brush quickly. But don't be concerned with the design. We have detail work that goes on top of this. Okay, I need to reload the brush down to the mixing spot, soft white, alizarin and phthalo until I start getting grays. Okay, back up to the canvas and block in. Now when I get close to the bunny rabbit, I'm going to be switching brushes so that I don't bump into his ear. But I'd say we just want to get coverage. Just really quickly I want to get this background blocked in because I have a few other tints I want in the background before I worry about detail. Now off camera I'll take a little small brush and go in here around the bunny rabbit, but before I do that off camera, let's do one other little area that's interesting. That's just going to be with a smaller brush. I'm going to use a knife and pick up some titanium white on the bottom of the knife and create a little bit of snow mixture on the surface of these colors. So I want to get a little snow look, so I'm going to just kind of smear and pull, just like you'd be smearing butter, the white look on top of the tinted colors, the grays and the pinker grays. And as I do that, I'm trying to get a little texturing into the effect. And I'm going more the white and the pink areas, more so than the blue areas. And just pressing it and smearing it on. I'll be doing a little bit of that with brush work, but this is just little patches of interest. And I just kind of clean the knife off and iron it, I guess is another way of explaining it. Iron it on. Okay, with another brush, I can use a little bit of brush work in that. In the area of the little path up here on the side, I want to just kind of put a little ridge of white and begin to sculpt in the snow so that I get this feeling of the ups and downs of little bunched up snow, I guess you can call it. And it mixes with those darks and gives me little disturbed snow. I guess there's such a thing as disturb. Anyhow, it has movements and action in it. And I want it to feel like it drops down in that shadowed area, so it creates little crevices and ruts where he's walked through the snow. And then I soften a little bit. Just lots of little pushing and pulling of the light colors so that I get that interest. Okay, I'm going to be taking and doing a little bit of paint mixing so that we can get some other effects done in the background. Let's look at the finished painting just for a minute so that we can go ahead and get ready to do some detail work. It was necessary for me to do some off-camera painting so that I could bring you up, and I'll show you what I did. But let's come down in this area right over here by the snow, and I think you'll be able to see a little bit in detail what I've done in some of the other areas. First of all, I'm using a shadow color, this color of shadow snow, and I'm going to lay in a shadow on the snow of a branch that I'm going to paint the branch after I put the shadow down. And this is going to be a shadow from a branch on the snow. Then I'm going to go back, wipe the brush, load some burnt umber, thin down. I had to thin down my paints, and it took me a minute to get them all soupy enough so that they would flow off the brush easily. Then I'm going to come back up to the canvas, and I'm going to put some character to the branch by letting it come down and kiss on top of the shadow, build a little bit of a bridge again, and then let the branch go up higher so that it would have the shadow down underneath it. I try to avoid laying right directly on top. Now this little piece of shadow right here could probably come from a little branch that's over here or over here. So I can build the shadow underneath the surface better if I put it down first and then bring the branch down to it. If you want to, you can clean your brush, take a little bit of your soft white, and I even like a little bit of the shadow snow on one edge of it, and then I come up and I'll lay a little bit of snow on the top edge of that branch. And if it gets dirty snow, you have to reload. But this is just one way of doing that with a liner brush. Now up here on the top part, I've done some other techniques similar with the liner brush. So we'll come up here to the top left corner, and let me show you what I've done up here in this area. I did a branch up in the top left, a large branch, and it was definitely done with the same technique that I did the one laying on the snow. But then I put some pine needles on it. The pine needles were done with the liner brush and one at a time, and let's go down and load some dark green on the brush. And then we'll come back up and I'll show you how I use the brush. I'm going to hold it out at the back end of the brush and pull just a little flip down. I just pull down very quickly. See if I want the cameraman to come right in here real tight, and I touch near a branch and flip and just pull, kind of like fingers radiating from an area, and pull some little pine needle type structures away from the branch area. So it was really done with different colors, browns, greens, until I got enough of a feeling of all these little needle things coming off of the branches. So establish your branches, then put in a little bit of the greenery or the needles coming off either direction. Some can shoot up or some can stick straight out, but they all look like just little needles coming off the branches. Then you can put a little snow up there. Let's go to the other side of the canvas, and I'll show you what I did with the filbert brush. I loaded some brown on the brush with a little bit of white on one corner so that I could just press down and get little pine cones. Let's get that a little darker in there. And get a little pine cone illusion. So I get both the brown and the white as I get little snow on top. And I just tap this on with 2 colors on the brush and get these little pine cones. And they look like they have a little bit of snow on them. If you just want to do it in 2 steps, just use the brown, put the little pine cone, and just kind of press down like you're pushing a button. Put a few little pine cones clustered off the end, and then you can go back with just a little bit of a light or an off-white and set a little bit on the top. But sometimes you'll end up getting dirty snow that way. So I like to put both colors on the brush in one press. So I put in a few little suggestions there, and they're not detailed, but in a photograph that I had of this background, that was basically all I was able to visualize from the photograph, and that's all I'm able to capture. Let's go inside this area here and see if we can blend out with a dry brush and a wiped out brush. And I'm just going to use a dry brush with no paint on it and rub and soften the inside edges of the den area. I'm going to kind of just rub, borrowing some of the color from above and letting it soften in. This makes it look like it goes into shadow better. So I rub and scrub, and if you want a little more light, you just kind of borrow from outside and you can push a little bit more into it and then let it kind of be like a jutting edge or a embankment of snow. And so I use the paint that's there and re-sculpt it just like a sculptor would sculpt. If you want more white on it, just take some white, put a line, and begin to blend it and make edges. I like to make interesting the roof of the cave a little bit. But then I want it to disappear, disappear, disappear back into there so you can almost see down inside of the, instead of leaving it just a solid black area. See if we can get a little more, whoops, I need to clean that brush and bring a little bit of lighter snow up along the edge. This makes that protrusion stand out a little bit, catches just a little bit of light. Okay, that's about all I did on that. If I have a chance, I'm going to go back in there and refine those bunnies, but they're pretty well got what I want in the base end. But to get fur on there, you can use a bristle brush, a lighter value, and just barely just touch and almost like you're brushing his hair. Little touches and nicks of lights and make him a little fuzzier. Keep the lights on the upper side. Now we don't want him to have too long a hair look onto him, so I really keep this quite light. On the back edge of him, right back here in shadow, I'm even going to use a little bit of this greenish tint and kind of reflect that cool snow back on the bottom side. So I'm going to go down to the cool snow, the phthalo, with a little alizarin in gray. And I'm going to come back up in here, and rather than bring any warmth, I want that to kind of look like he's just come out of the den. I'm going to tap a little bit on, and you can see how that's a little greener now, or cooler. And then I'm going to just lift on it, and I don't want to get him too fuzzy, so I'm barely giving him a soft edge there. And tap that in so that it mixes in. So I like that little bit of coolness, so that part looks a little more in shadow. Most of the fur areas and the detail work can be restated with a fresh application of paint. The little trough area here, or the disturbed snow, if we just kind of play in it a little bit, adding more lights and darks, we can build new little edges. I like to build like a top edge, and then I pull the way I want the snow to lay down. So I have to kind of pull on it, drop it down in the crevice. And actually, if you build a light edge, it looks like it's the light hitting on the top, and then pull down away from it the way you want the slope of the snow to be indicated. And play in the snow. That's always fun. I think you've seen a little bit of what I'm able to do with just a base temp, but the first most important thing is to get your pattern on, get it blocked in, and then start refining and sculpting in your areas. I could spend a lot more time making a refined painting out of this, but to get you into the mood of painting, get photographs, get reference material, and I think you'll find that, think about it, and all you have to do is get a block in, or a basic sketch, a block in, and build on it, and save your detail for last. I want to thank you for joining me again. I love painting for you, and I've got some new things for you in another show.